Okay, this is the first video in hopefully a long line of videos that I intend to make. Just talking about life in general and, willing to leave my own thoughts and always willing to hear what other people have to say. I'm in the middle of a kind of what you might call a career break, so it's wonderful to just have this chance to just spew my thoughts out on things and topics that are interesting to me and which I hope also relate to a lot of you. So let's start this off. So back in COVID, I had some time during then because we were working from home, and I spent a lot of time reading Quora, and I used my wife's account, and I just wrote things from the bottom of my heart in a lot of cases, just things that stuck deeply to me. I think one of the things that actually took off back then was a particular thread that I answered, which was, "What are the best life tips you can give? What are some of life's best tips?" And I gave a series of 10 of them. Now, the interesting thing is this blew up. I didn't really care about it, didn't write it for that reason. About 487,000 views, 2,000 likes, and it's been shared multiple times, and there was actually quite a few comments on it. Now, I probably want to start off and say that I want to talk about each one of those views. I think that's a great way to actually start this and do a 10-part series just on those 10 views, one in each video. And then I'll progress to eventually other topics that are close to my heart. Again, these are my thoughts, these are my opinions. Take them for what they are. Hopefully, they're relatable. Hopefully, they hit something and you guys can relate and appreciate it. Or, disagreement is always fine too. Okay, so first tip I want to talk about is really what I would say, don't tell everything about yourself to everyone, or don't tell everyone everything about yourself. Now, we should take this and kind of divide it into like a couple of different subtopics. What I mean by that isn't a generic everything about yourself to anyone. Rather, we can break it into four different quadrants, and there could be more than that. But when we talk about this, we could talk about in the situation of work where you are a boss and you have people reporting into you. We could talk about it from the purpose of a business and business partners. We can talk about it from the purpose of relationships, boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance. We can talk about it from the purpose of family and friends. So I want to start off by saying, let's talk about why this is not necessarily good from a family friend perspective. And it's going to be interesting. My take isn't necessarily going to be what I would say people may think around. That is to say that when you tell everything about yourself to your family and friends, I really feel very strongly that it puts them in a position where it's not fair. Because a lot of things that you tell, it's not just descriptive, it's telling someone, and a lot of times that requires an action or a reaction of some sort, right? So you put people in a very difficult position where especially if they're close family or friends, they don't want to give a reaction. It makes them uncomfortable. Perhaps it's a situation they don't want to talk about. Perhaps they have very, very different views than you, and they don't really want to share that because they're afraid it might harm the relationship. Or other times, you're telling them something and you almost are begging them to take control of the situation. And quite frankly, a lot of people don't have the time, don't have the energy, don't have the expertise to want to do that. And you're forcing them in a corner. And so that's not fair to them. And so that's one way to look at it where I don't think you want to tell everyone, everything about you. So I want to get out of the way first and foremost. It's not always people trying to take advantage of you. It's also in a way when you do this, you could potentially be taking advantage of other people in a way they don't like. So that's one quadrant I want to talk about. Now, a very typical thing people talk about telling too much about yourself is, of course, in the world of dating and, being in relationships. Now, everyone or most people have been at least one relationship, if not more. Okay. There's a saying that a little mystery goes a long way. There's definitely truth to that because I personally am not someone who loves to talk too much on the phone, but when you tell someone too much, especially if it's someone you don't know that well and you're trying to build something special with that person. I think the problem that it creates is you give them your good and the bad all up front. You force them to judge you when they don't necessarily want to judge you so fast. You don't want to create an impression just like that. I mean, we all do based on our looks, we all do based on how we talk. Impressions are formed very quickly up front. I get that. But the more you talk about every single little thing you do or have done or want to do, your aspirations, your everything to that person, um, they don't want to hear all that. I mean, first of all, it takes too long. You heard of that, too long to read. Um, this is literally incomprehensible. I mean, there's only so much information you can shove down someone's throat before they puke it up because it's too much to get in. So naturally, people are going to tune out. That's another thing. You're going to force people to get not so much bored, but antsy, fidgety. So, save some for another time. I mean, there's always going to be another time. You don't have to rush into it, right? Like if this is the right person or there's an obvious connection, take your time. It's easier that way, right? And also, you don't know, whatever you share may change. That's another really big thing is your experiences, how you did before, what are your likes, dislikes, et cetera, et cetera. Depending, if you give the other person a chance to talk, you may learn something new and then you react together and form new opinions, new uh, things to look at, and potentially go a different way than you've possibly experienced before. So again, it leads to different avenues. Okay. Then the third quadrant I want to talk about is in a business. This is probably very easy for a lot of people to relate to. The simple thing here is in a business environment or anything, you're usually talking with people, not necessarily going to include family and friends, but of course you can, with people who you're not necessarily that close with. And here we get into the situation of yes, the wrong people can definitely use things against you. It's happened many times, and you got to be aware. You don't want to tell people your financial situation, as they can do things that can out you, put you in a bad situation, could bankrupt you. You don't want to talk too much about your thoughts in general in terms of any issues you may personally have with regards to the business. Just you don't want to do that because you don't know how they're going to actually use you. Typically when you want to get into business, it's not always 50-50 footing, right? Sometimes one person, or a lot of times one person has a little bit of edge. But what you always want to have is a complementary type of business where you have partnerships where each person has strengths and weaknesses that complement the other. That being said, weaknesses shouldn't be shared up front. They can be actually noticed as partners progress in the business. And then all of them work together to resolve that. But just sharing it up front causes uncertainty. People may want to back out, causes just issues that you don't want to bring up so quickly. That's my thoughts, at least. And I've been in situations where I've told too much for business that I won't go into that have hurt me immensely. So this is very painful for me and something I deeply regret doing. The fourth thing I want to talk about is, I worked, in the finance industry for 25 plus years. There is something to be said when you have a manager and employee relationship, right? So there are things that a manager knows. I was a manager, and you absolutely just cannot tell the employee. A lot of people are going to say, but you should let the employees uh, know everything. Or there's thoughts going around where why didn't the manager tell them what harm could it do? A very good example is there's going to be layoffs, or there's going to be restructuring. I don't care how good friends you are with that employee. It's really hard, or pains me to say this, but it's true. It's rare to create the type of deep friendship. Even, I mean, you can create it somewhat professionally, but a deep friendship that lasts beyond work with your employees, especially if you come in working for that person. Okay, it's always going to be that kind of unequal footing. And so it's very difficult to establish a true peer type of relationship. That being said, very good case is why wouldn't you want to tell them? I mean, look, work has to be done, right? Your employees are there for a reason. They're there to help you achieve your targets and theirs as well to grow. We are in or have been for a while very lean in terms of how many people are working for a particular department or team. And so for every employee that leaves, that puts the pressure on other employees to pick up the work. So why you don't want to, a very obvious reason is because it will cause that person to potentially lose morale, which is going to result in one of two things. They're either going to actively start looking for a job and leave, most likely, or just as likely, they're going to not put in the effort because why should they? Trust me, I know from both sides how it works, both being a manager and also being on the receiving end. So for this, you have to think a little bit more clearly where you don't want to tell everything because in this case, the employee may actually, if they quit, like I said, or don't put in the effort, it makes the rest of the team suffer. It hurts the rest of the team's morale because word gets spread. Effectiveness therefore goes down, productivity goes down, and also ultimately as a manager, it hurts you. First of all, it betrays the trust of your management. Why did you do that? For no gain, no reason whatsoever. And then secondly, it just hurts you because when work doesn't get done, you either have to take it over as the manager, or if you can't, too bad. The buck stops with you, and you look bad to your management. So it's a lose lose in almost every single situation. So there are I'm taking a very simplified situation, but I want to explain just why it is that way, where you don't want to tell. So to end all this, I want to say for this particular point tip, when I say don't tell everyone everything about yourself, I want it to apply to a variety of things. So don't tell everyone everything about yourself depending on the situation. Everything about yourself in terms of what you know from a manager perspective of a job. Don't tell everything about yourself personally from a financial or whatever position in a business. Don't tell everything about your previous experiences or whatever when you're in a relationship. Don't tell everything about yourself in terms of what you have going on, what are your issues, your this and that to your family and friends, because you don't want to put your onus on them, at least not all the time. Okay. And so I just want to end this. As always, it's going to be sort of like a talkathon where I could just share ideas, my thoughts, and kind of expand on my thoughts. And hopefully, you guys, it resonates with some of you. And if it does, feel free to click follow, like the video, and I will go through a bunch of these in the future. I think we'll have 9 more of these in a series, and then I'm going to start talking about other topics. All right. Thank you very much, and hope you enjoyed it. Take care.